Happy to see that everybody is engaged in conversation. Welcome everybody here in the room. Welcome everybody online. We are opening our 5,635th meeting. Welcome. Our new tradition is the thought of the day. Who is going to join me? The man himself. Very good. I'll get out of your way.
We're going to be meeting Mr. McGovern, who's going to give us a talk about the status of polio and how is Rotary involved in polio eradication. And polio has been around for probably 4,000 to 6,000 years, as manifested by some mummies, some Egyptian mummies that were found to be deformed. It took for a long, I don't know what happened since 6,000 years ago, but we had a recrudescence of the problem back in the 50s. And it took a while for that to settle. 2 vaccines were developed, the Salk vaccine and the Sabin vaccine. And since then, Rotary has been involved in trying to eradicate the disease. Reading about polio, I thought about who named the disease poliomyelitis, and was Dr. Kussmaul. And Dr. Kussmaul was a famous physician who taught at Heidelberg and 2 other institutions in Germany, who contributed a lot to knowledge in medicine. And he changed the name from infantile paralysis to poliomyelitis. And ergo the name poliomyelitis, polio meaning gray, and myelitis meaning marrow. After this, I run into a quote, and I didn't expect that this person would come up with that quote. This person is one of the 4 artists that basically were against Franco, and they were Pablo Ruiz Picasso, Federico Garcia Lorca, a great poet, Luis Buñuel, a very famous cinematographer, and Salvador Dali. Those people were very, very close. And they were not philosophers, they were artists. But let me tell you something that Picasso said that really brought this to life. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. So what's your gift? What are you giving away? Thank you.
Thank you, Pancho. And with that, Marga, if you want to join me to make a quick introduction, as always, in the interest of time, respect to the speaker. Succinct questions, please, 1 per person. For those online, put types of questions in the chat box. We'll get to those as well. And with that, Marga.
Well, hello, everybody. It's great to be back here with you in person and all of you on Zoom. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today. Now I'm going to proceed to introduce our speaker. And that we're so fortunate that Mike was able to join us today. So Mike McGovern has served as chair of the Rotary International PolioPlus Committee since October 2014. He also represents Rotary on the Polio Oversight Board, which governs the Global Polio Eradication Initiative Partnership and chairs its Finance and Accountability Committee. Mike is the global chair of the Rotary Leadership Institute and formerly chaired the Rotary Leadership Institute of Northeast America. He joined Rotary in 1986 as a member of the Rotary Club of South Portland, Cape Elizabeth in Maine, USA. After serving as a district governor in 1999-2000, he served in many Rotary positions, including as a director and vice president of Rotary International and as a trustee and vice chair of the Rotary Foundation. He led Rotary's rezoning efforts in 2007 and 2008 and in 2017-18 and was chair of the RI Membership Committee and has chaired the Rotary Action Group for Family Health and AIDS Prevention. He served his entire career with the town of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, beginning as an intern in 1977 and serving as town manager for 31 years until his retirement in 2016. Mike led Maine's cities and towns as president of the Maine Municipal Association and served as president of the currently, I apologize for the interruption, and served as chair, as president of the Maine Town and City Management Association. In addition to his Rotary responsibilities, he currently serves on the board of Park Danforth, a not-for-profit retirement community in Portland, as a chair of the statewide diocesan review board of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Portland. Mike, we are delighted that your busy schedule allowed you to join us on this meeting today. So I will cede the microphone to you. Mike is joining us in Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marga. Good to see you again. Good to be with you. And thank you for inviting me to speak to the Chicago Club. I know you've heard this many times, but any Rotarian around the world considers it a special honor to speak to your club, and it's wonderful to be able to do so. What I want to do is to give you an update on where we stand with eradicating polio. And I like this picture in the slide and these step ladders, because if you look at a step ladder at the bottom, it has a very wide base. This is a little like polio eradication. When we began this, we were in 125 countries, and we kept narrowing the number of countries down to 2 that are now endemic. But as you advance along a ladder, when you get near the top, you begin to get signs. Don't go any higher. There are steps that you shouldn't step on, and you definitely shouldn't stand on the top of the ladder. Nonetheless, we need to get polio done. So, what we need to do is to lift the entire ladder up from the foundation. You can easily, paint whatever they're doing to that sign from a higher point, provided you raise the bottom of the ladder rather than try to step unsafely. That's what the whole world is doing with polio eradication now. It's trying to see that we reach the summit, which in this case is the end of all polio. On the next slide, I think it's a reminder. This is Rotary's #1 humanitarian priority in the world. It's been so for decades. While progress has been made, there's been an affirmation and a reaffirmation at different times that we're really not going to start a new global humanitarian project, all of Rotary Global, before we really get polio done. So, it's imperative to get polio done for the children of the world, but even more so, I think it's imperative to get it done so we can move on to other things. There are many needs and there are many desires of Rotarians around the world to take on another project. So, while, my thing is polio, and, I don't get involved in the debate of, what comes next. It's important that, that polio has really increased the standing of Rotary worldwide, particularly among public officials, people in the health community. And, it's important that at least we begin to think of what we do next. This picture, by the way, is in the Philippines. And this was just before the pandemic hit. And they'd had some vaccine-derived cases. And they had this event where all the mothers in the neighborhood brought their children. It was so reminiscent of the very first campaign in 1979, just a few miles from here, when they actually gave the first polio drops as part of the polio eradication effort. The next slide, outlines really what the strategy is and what the timeline is at this point. Every few years, a new polio eradication strategy is updated in order to ensure that our goals are clear and in order to determine that we're taking all the necessary steps to lead to the eradication of polio. There are 2 goals. One is to interrupt the virus, the transmission in the two endemic countries. Those, as I mentioned, are Afghanistan and Pakistan. And secondly, is to stop what was seen as outbreaks in other countries, both of the vaccine-derived nature as well as the wild polio virus. But the goal is by the end of 2023, just next year, we won't have any more wild polio virus cases, and we'll stop these so-called vaccine-derived cases. And I'll cover in a little bit how that is happening and how we think the goal is still attainable, even though the cases are up a little bit this year. And then by 2026, that would be when certification would occur. And then after that, as you can see, they're stopping different things. Those are different types of vaccines with the ultimate plan for a number of years. They'll still do the injectable or the inactivated polio vaccine. So, there is a plan, there is certification. It could be less than 3 years. The certification commission just said at the note at the bottom of the slide, provided that there's adequate surveillance and every indication is polio's disappeared. On the next slide, it's all about working together within Rotary, at all levels of Rotary, your activity, your participation, but it's also, as you can see in this picture, it's the frontline workers. They're really the key to all this now. They are the ones that need to convince, particularly the mothers, to have their kids open the mouths to accept the drops. It's also our partners, the Gates Foundation and WHO and UNICEF and an outfit called Gavi, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. But it's finally, it's the governments of the world. You need permission from the governments to actually have things happen in the community. They are the ones that are much involved in operating the programs on a day-to-day basis. We were looking recently, we've talked a lot about what we've accomplished over the years with polio eradication. When I say we, I'm always talking about all of Rotary, all Rotarians, and I'm talking about our partners. But we've often in presentations looked at, and we've cited, how much has been spent, since the beginning. We talk about the number of cases. We have gone from 350,000 a year down to less than 30 so far this year of the wild polio virus. 99.9%, as we say. But what have we done, particularly since the pandemic? I think everyone sort of relates now to the pandemic, and what's happened since the pandemic began. And since then, we've tried to fundraise from Rotarians, mostly successfully. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We also, we've continued the programs, and we looked at how we spent the money in the last 2 years. It's 50 million. We hope to raise from Rotarians every year, and match 2 to 1 by the Gates Foundation. And so that adds up to $150 million a year that Rotary is allocating. And over 2 years, that's 300 million. But so where did that money go during the pandemic? One of the biggest focuses this last couple of years was actually buying vaccines. And they're now, if you look at just the vaccine itself, it's 14 cents. The whole delivery system, all that is about $2. But for the actual vaccine itself, it's 14 cents per dose. And we allocated about $55 million to buying vaccines. So we actually provided vaccines that went to 391 million children over the last 2 years. And to me, that's really amazing. It's more than half of all the vaccines that were given out by the Global Polio Eradication Program were purchased by Rotary, and we're saving a lot of lives as a result of that. On the next slide, the other thing, we've had these vaccine-derived cases, and what these are. There was a really good article in Rotary magazine in October, if any of you still have it, or you can find it online. But there's people in the world who don't get any vaccines. They're either anti-vax or they just don't get around to it. The government requirements aren't much. And what's happened is if someone doesn't get any vaccines and they have very low immunity levels as a result, I mean vaccines to anything, when other people get vaccines, such as the polio vaccine, that have a live virus in them, they secrete it, and these under-vaccinated people end up picking it up from the water and from, other sources. And we've had a breakout of these vaccine-derived cases as a result. A lot of people ignored vaccines, other than COVID during the pandemic. So Rotary actually had to allocate about $75 million, or roughly, 1/4 of the money is the last 2 years to deal with these outbreaks of where, a lot of them have been in Africa, across Central Africa. Northern Nigeria was the worst spot. And we also actually had the wild polio virus when we had a case in Malawi last November after Afro was certified as polio free. And we've had, I think, 7 cases, maybe 6 in Mozambique this year, which also come from Malawi. So, one thing important is, we need to, as you saw earlier in the strategy, we need to knock those out. And it's not inexpensive. In Rotary, the cost in the last year for this was almost $300 million. So it just begs the issue that we have to get rid of these. And the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you how that is happening, and we're doing it. So the next slide is, in the 2 countries where it's endemic, that's where we make most of our investments over the last 2 years. You can see the amount here, almost 124 million. Those countries are a bit challenging. They both had changes in government. The last couple of years, we all saw the evacuation in Kabul at the airport, and it was messy, and we're reducing it. As you'll see on the next slide, I want to go more specific into the communities. Pakistan is an interesting country. It's considered ground zero for polio eradication, for polio cases. It's where we have our last remaining real reservoirs of the polio virus. And what's interesting is, I didn't mention it, but on the last slide, it said that we're down to 3 districts in Pakistan. That's pretty amazing when I don't know how many districts there are in Pakistan, but there are hundreds of them. And to only have cases in 3 districts. And, the 20 or so cases we have in Pakistan this year, 17 of them are in one place called North Waziristan, Southern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They challenged me with my pronunciations, but it's in the one village that's worse than anyone else, where most of the cases are. There's only 25,000 children there under the age of 5, and I think we're closer than ever to eradicating polio. And it's when I look at these facts, when I look at these issues, to see that there were families of viruses, and back in 2020 there were 11 of them in Pakistan. They got all these lettered names you see there under clusters, and in 2021 it dropped to 4, and now there's only one family of viruses that, anytime you see a virus or a case in Pakistan these days, it's coming from this one virus that's still spreading. We knocked out the partnership, Rotary, the government, the frontline workers knocked out all of those other clusters. And, if we can knock out 10, why can't we knock out 1? But it takes, persistence, and it really takes the dedication, particularly in the area in red on this map, where we need to work harder. We need to convince more mothers and fathers as well to take the vaccine. On the next slide is a look at Afghanistan. It was really discouraging last August when we saw those planes, and all those people trying to get to the airport in Kabul. And, I think everyone worried, what was going to happen when the Taliban took charge, not only for, polio, but for so many other issues as well. And, the country is going through a difficult time. The health system is really weak. All of the aid that the United States, once provided is no longer there. And, there's been food shortages, you name it. But interestingly enough, surprisingly, the Taliban reversed course on polio as soon as they took charge. They immediately, where they weren't allowing house-to-house vaccinations, which is the best way to do it, in all of the green areas on the map here, they immediately started to allow house-to-house vaccinations. In the places that are in the south, there's Kandahar, Helmand, Urzagan. They even though they're a different color here, village by village, district by district, they're starting to allow house-to-house vaccinations. The decisions are being made locally. So, at this point, from going to really no house-to-house vaccinations for about a year, during the end of the previous government, we've gone to 80% of the children now that we're trying to immunize, the kids under the age of 5, are now being immunized. It's amazing. There's about 9 million children here. There's, back in Pakistan, there's 55 million. So, it's quite an effort to reach them all, but it's, they're hiring more women, and I don't want to, defend, I don't want to praise the Taliban. It's the last thing I want to do, but, we work with whatever government's in charge. And, I did have an opportunity to meet the health minister of Afghanistan. I was over in Pakistan last November, and he came over to meet with the group that was there. And, they've indicated, excellent commitment. And, the vaccines are getting out there. They're doing a campaign right about now, but it's still a dangerous area. While the Taliban has its own enemies, particularly, the group's ISIS. It has a slightly different name there in Afghanistan. But just this weekend, we had a polio worker, not a Rotarian, but one of the local folks near Jalalabad who got in his car and a bomb went off. He lost a leg, and last I knew he was in critical condition. I checked yesterday on him, but it's a tough area to work. And the frontline workers, the women, they the wages are pretty low. They only make $4 a day for their work. And what Rotary does is we fund an awful lot of the operational cost in these countries. We don't give money to the Taliban directly. We don't give money to other political parties. We give the money to UNICEF and to WHO. And a lot of what we fund, the vaccines, but the other point I really want to emphasize is that we are funding the frontline workers. The trustees of the Rotary Foundation just last week allocated a substantial sum to hire millions of these frontline workers who will go door to door in the countries. And in Pakistan, for example, they're having a national immunization day coming up soon. And we're funding about 90% of the cost of it. We Rotarians. So, we're not only putting the drops in the mouths, we're paying for the transportation, we're paying for, all of the different costs involved, and particularly the work. So Afghanistan, we're optimistic. There's been a couple of cases there this year. There's been no vaccine-derived cases and no vaccine-derived cases in Pakistan. So, keep our fingers crossed. No earthquakes and floods are never good, some of these things, but overall, it's going pretty good. And the next slide they've looked at, there's a technical advisory group that met earlier this month, and they looked, how close are we? And, there's some risk, floods, elections are coming up next year in Pakistan, always a treacherous time, security, as I mentioned, there's issues. But if you look at the blue areas, that means there's very little risk of having new polio cases. The yellow areas, not so much. And this is, just emphasize, this is both Afghanistan on the left, Pakistan on the right. The really tough areas are what they call Southern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, North Waziristan. It's that red area right in the middle. And, so we can't take our eyes off anywhere. But if we really target that red area, which we're doing, we get rid of this in 123 countries. There's no reason we can't do the last two, particularly when we're looking at such narrow areas. Can we go back one slide for a second? One thing I pointed out, a lot of people wonder, what I like to point out, a lot of people wonder in Afghanistan, are there areas where there's a total ban on vaccination? If you look at the lower right of the map, you see one little red spot. That's the only area in Afghanistan where vaccinations are totally banned. There's a rebel group there that just won't allow it. But that's significant change and significant progress. And so go back forward to one more. Yeah, one more. So, how are we going to get rid of these vaccine-derived cases? There's a new oral polio vaccine or a novel oral polio vaccine. It's now being administered in most of the countries where we're seeing these cases. And in 20 of the 23 countries, we've seen that there's absolutely no cases have had breakthroughs. We've heard from our own vaccine about breakthrough cases, and we see them with COVID. But in 20 of these 23 countries, in another country, we were able to take care of it with this new vaccine after the second round. And there's really only where we haven't been able to stop it is in areas where there's turmoil, wars, unrest. And, those are in northern Nigeria, where the terrorist group Boko Haram still holds quite a bit of sway. And what took so long in Nigeria to find that regular polio-free. Somalia, Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, and northern Yemen, which is a real troublesome area right now. So, we're working, either Rotary or others, to do negotiations, to do partnerships, to find all the different ways to have the influence in these areas. But this new vaccine, because it's more stable than the old vaccine, it just doesn't spread, the disease, the virus to unvaccinated people. And that's why, we expect to see with the vaccine-derived cases where we're providing this new vaccine, a great decline in cases. And, I can't say that we'll have the last case by the end of next year of the vaccine-derived case, but, they're doing the right things. And, we need a couple of good breaks in Nigeria. We need some more support from the government there. And the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the president has taken a great interest in improving the health systems and in immunizations. But unfortunately, he controls the country closer to Kinshasa, but he has less influence as you get further east and where we have the problems. So if we go to the next slide, we really got to make sure that Africa stays polio free as much as possible. We spent a lot of money to have it certified as polio free, to Nigeria to eliminate all the wild polio virus cases. And most of the news is good, but we need, if a kid comes into a local health spot and there's signs of paralysis, even if the kid doesn't walking, but just in the tough, moving the legs in a crib type thing. We've got to take fecal samples. They need to go to a lab, and Rotary is funding a lot of that different activity. We're also mounted major responses in Malawi and Mozambique. One challenge we have is that in Zimbabwe, it's all by the Zambezi River down there. Some of you may have visited that area. Zimbabwe hasn't had an NID in a year or two, and we have not. In fact, the Gates Foundation, the head of global development, who's head of the Polio Oversight Board, Chris Elias, he's actually down in that region now and has meetings that trying to meet. He is meeting with the Zimbabwean officials, if I'm pronouncing that right, to try to convince them to mount the response that's needed. So, it's we're doing well, but every time I look at these pictures of the frontline workers and getting those drops, and that's what it's all about. It's Rotary is intently focused in making sure that people want to accept the drops, and that everyone particularly remains safe. That's the end to a polio free world. So the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with. Some of you may have heard polio was detected in New York and Jerusalem and in England. And all of this derived from the same genetic sequencing that came from Pakistan. In Jerusalem, the case was actually in Bethlehem, which is controlled by the Palestinians. And last week I was on a Zoom call with the Palestinian health minister, and I don't know if it was a he or she, to be honest. I couldn't see them, and I had a translator's voice. But anyway, they were saying how closely they're working with Israel to address this, the polio detection in the region, and that they've both increased the vaccination programs. And one, it was interesting to hear that the Palestinians and the Israelis were cooperating, and polio was a vehicle for doing that. But it's also good to see that polio is being addressed. So in England, we hadn't any cases, but we had some positive environmental samples, and they use IPV, the injectable inactivated. But someone apparently went there and who had picked up a vaccine-derived polio, and only 1 of 200 people who get it know that they have it. So so someone goes back to England, and it shows up in the environmental samples. But the real worry there is, the green is good, red is bad. You look at the inset with London, they're just not vaccinating their kids there, to the degree that they need to be. And, it leaves them very vulnerable. And, I was looking at the news lately, another new prime minister today, and probably another new health minister coming up. And, they need to focus more on their own country and increasing the vaccination rates. In the United States, and this New York thing, again, this was happened in Rockland County, which any of you are familiar with the area. It's the Tappan Zee Bridge dumps out into Rockland County across the Hudson, now known as the Mario Cuomo Bridge. But there's some communities within Rockland County that have very low vaccination rates. So they're very susceptible to a vaccine case coming in. And, this was identified late summer. It showed up first in Rockland, but then in the environmental samples right in the city, in Nassau County, out on Long Island, and just north. And what's very interesting about this case, a 29-year-old male, never traveled anywhere. The virus came to him. And we always have said that polio is only a plane ride away, and this New York case showed it. So it could show up in any of the suburbs of Chicago, anywhere in the Chicago metro area, as a result of someone picking it up and going into a community, a section that's unvaccinated. The next slide. It's Rotary has been the foundation of this. Ian Risley, who was at the pledging moment in Berlin last week, got up and he pledged that Rotary would try to spend $150 million over the next 3 years. Chris Elias, who's the gentleman who's now in Zimbabwe, got up after Ian, with Ian on stage, and said that they would match it 2-to-1 for the next 3 years. So, they're going to be looking to Rotary to do an awful lot of it. And, it's the Rotarians have been generous. It's not easy to raise $50 million a year, but, we have a lot of clubs. So, if everyone does a share of it, it definitely helps out. We're also introducing, and I should have asked during the time I had to talk to Connor and some of the others, we're launching up something called the PolioPlus Society. That's, I don't know if you can see my pin, but that's the pin I have on. And that's encouraging people to pledge $100 a year for PolioPlus until the time of certification. I look at it over, it's like 5 years or so. The pledge over 5 years is Connor's nodding yes, is your district starting to to roll it out. But it's that was I joined Rotary in '86, and the first thing I was asked for a contribution, I gave about $500 to polio. So to me, it's come full circle. We're now asking Rotarians to do it again. But I think it's I'm really confident we might have the last cases at the end of next year. So I want to conclude by I know that your club and others do so much. Polio, is the #1 priority, and it'll only be the second disease that's ever eliminated. And I just want to thank everyone. I know Marga and others have been on National Immunization Days, and I appreciate that. And if you ever have a chance, there's nothing like putting the drops into kids' mouths and knowing you're making a difference. So with that, I'll turn it back. I think we've left some time for some questions. I hope so. Yeah, the microphone.
Timo, you're muted. We can't hear you, Timo.
There we go.
Michael,
You're on.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Margo.
Yep, should be good now, Timo.
So real quick, I said thank you for the insight for the presentation. Sorry, this thing didn't work, but Mario, you get the first question.
Okay, all right. Well, Mike, it's always a delight to hear what you have to tell us about polio. And I'm sure many of you have other questions. I have one that concerns Africa. We were overjoyed when Africa was declared polio-free. And how do these wild poliovirus cases in Mozambique and Malawi affect that status, and what is being done? The other concern I have, a question I have, is about there are countries that are just well, before we can keep the vaccine whole, right? The polio vaccine as well as with the COVID vaccine, and there are countries where in Africa that it's not just possible to do. Do you have something to say about that? But my first question is about what happens with this type of polio-free countries.
As Lisa's saying, it was very difficult to hear. Could someone summarize the question? President Timo? There we go.
Okay, maybe this will be better. Okay, so the question is, what happens with the wild polio virus cases we had in Africa? How does that affect the status of Africa as a polio-free continent?
Great question, Marga. You know, the initial indication and the response was that it wouldn't affect it at all. But the Afro-Regional Certification Commission, I had a meeting recently, and they have backtracked a little. And they said that as long as the cases stay where they are now, that they won't reconsider certification. But if they continue to see spread and they see a spike in cases, they'll meet again. And I don't know if they'll remove certification, but they'll do something very similar to it that will be honest, but will be difficult to accept because it'd be an extreme disappointment. But it is possible. But right now, based on the current information, they don't plan to remove the certification.
Thank you very much. Anybody else has a question? Jody.
I just have a basic polio question. How long is the vaccine good for?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to answer that because there's different vaccines that have different periods, and it all depends on how well they maintain the cold chain or the temperature of it. But generally, most of the vaccines are good for a year to a year and a half. And it's not that they may not be available, but they don't want to use them thereafter with the risk they might not be available. It's just like, you take an Advil or an ibuprofen and, there's a date on the thing. And sometimes I take them 4 days after, 4 years after the expiration date, and they seem to work just as fine. But, they do, the people that keep these vaccines, UNICEF in particular, they do follow the dates that they're certified to be good too, but it's generally a year and a half.
Right.
Hadn't had that question in a while. That's good.
Thank you.
I have a question. Hopefully you'll have an answer, maybe you won't. If the cost of eradicating polio so far has been $50 million, what is it in money? The equivalent, the benefit of eradicating polio from the point of view of health and economic issues?
Yeah, there are different time frames. You got to be careful whenever you look at the statistics. But if you look at, since the global polio eradication initiative has begun, Rotary has invested $2.6 billion in polio eradication, of which 1.3, roughly half, has been given us by the Gates Foundation, because they didn't always want it. The overall partnership has spent approximately $20 billion. So, a lot of money, but it's also, been over a lot of years. Right now, the budget total is around $1 billion a year for all of the immunization activities that are undertaken by the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. The projection over the next few years is, I don't know how the phone can ring when I tried to turn it off, but anyway, the projection over the next few years is until the certification is about another $4 billion. This pledging moment in the Berlin last week, they announced, I think, 2.6 billion, but there's actually more money to come in than that, because the US government only pledges a year at a time. Canada plans to make another pledge. They haven't done it yet. Yeah, money's tight. We're looking at having to reduce the budget, prioritize to what they call consequential geographies, but we know where, it's most important to spend the money, and with WHO and other professional advice, I think they'll see their way through to figure out how that happens. I didn't hit the exact question totally, but I hope I addressed the points.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. You mentioned about the, I guess you want to call it a variant of polio that's being created because of the excretion of trace amounts of the polio virus into those new cases. Can you elaborate a little bit on how that works and what's going on? How is that a new vaccination that they're applying to that? Was it did you say the polio vaccine?
Yeah, it's called the NOPV, called the novel oral polio vaccine, or the new. It's drops. And the old vaccine they've been using, what they called MOPV and BOPV, too many initials, too many acronyms. That vaccine was what they call less stable. So as a result, it morphed into a really active level of the virus again, and that's problems. It didn't happen very often, and we're immunizing about 500 million kids a year, so to get 1,000 cases isn't good, but in the big scheme of things, it was an equation that it was still worth vaccinating everyone. But this new vaccine seems to eliminate that. If provided you get it out there, but two, that you actually have a good campaign, because you gotta reach the critical mass to that builds up the immunity in the community, and it's all about running good campaigns and getting as many people immunized as possible, reducing the refusals, and we're doing okay we're not getting many refusals, so that's good, but that's what works. And again, I encourage you, the Rotary magazine, go online, Google Rotary magazine October. You can download it, and there's a great article. It's long. It's 7 or 8 articles, 7 or 8 pages, but it explains in detail how these vaccine-derived cases have been a problem and how it's being addressed.
How about online? On Zoom, unmute yourself, ask a question. I can't see the chat box, so I encourage you to just speak up.
We don't have any questions in the chat at the moment. If anyone would like to unmute and ask a question, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, this is Connor. I'll ask a question. How are we going to use the infrastructure of polio after we eradicate polio? Are there other diseases that we'll look towards to use in terms of, the structure and the governance that we've set up for polio?
Yeah, good question. I mean, one concern throughout is what we call transition and integration. Increasingly, although Rotary is only paying for polio vaccines, we're trying to combine some of our vaccination campaigns with measles and some of the other diseases that have had. We've always called it PolioPlus, but we really need the governments to step up And, most of the world, they've done it. They've taken over their vaccination programs. They're doing what they call the routine vaccinations and also the polio vaccinations. But, there's a few countries in Africa that can afford to and haven't. And then there's quite a few countries in Africa that can't afford to and haven't. And fortunately, the WHO this past year, for the first time, set aside money from their own budget to help some of these countries that should be transitioning and on. But we have a transition committee that's very active, that's looking at it. And so, the bureaucracy will be slimmed, because all bureaucracies can be slimmed. But at the same time, we want to make sure that all of the progress we've made doesn't fall apart. Very definitely. And that it addresses other does other health interventions.
Thanks, Mike.
Mentioned in the very beginning that thanks to polio, Rotary has begun to be a lot better known internationally. So we're sitting at the table with the big guys and the big girls. Could you mention some of the organizations? Because we tend to think that everything that happens in Rotary is at the club. Well, clearly there is a lot of very important things that is taking place outside the clubs. So could you mention for our audience, what are the organizations that we have been able to reach out thanks to our polio eradication cause?
Good question, Mark. We work with other organizations. We also work with governments and government officials. We work very closely, for instance, with the CDC in the United States. Rochelle Walensky, who's the head of that, was in Berlin last week. She came back with a positive COVID response. So I immediately tested myself, having spent time with her. But, that's one example. Dr. Tedros participated with Jennifer, and I think John, your husband John, was there as well in Geneva this past week. The meeting in Berlin, the German Chancellor spoke to us. Shekhar, last year's Rotary International President, met with now King Charles to talk about polio. We've worked very closely with all the different prime ministers of the United Kingdom. The UNICEF, we had a couple of Rotarians last week, had a private meeting with Kathy Russell, who's the head of UNICEF worldwide. And, I could name, from Nelson Mandela, meeting with Luis G.I., a past president. It's, practically all leaders of the world. Mitch McConnell is a polio survivor himself. He's worked with us. We work very closely with a lot of, with Dick Durbin from your state. And it's endless. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Seth Berkley is the head of that. But particularly as Rotary presidents have traveled across the world, they always raise polio as an issue with all the government officials they meet. But and the German Chancellor specifically mentioned polio, and obviously there's the Gates Foundation, and they just gave Rotary an action group $3 million to put on health camps in Africa, which is very positive. So we're all of us working together are getting it done.
Not sure this thing is working, but in good old tradition, Mike, we'd like to give you a little thank you gift. Typically, we have a Rotary cup hiding here. It's not hiding, but we'll get it to you. Thank you for spending the time with us. We'll get back to you with our thank you present. Jumping the agenda a tiny little bit, our polio fundraising goal is $2,500. We have so far collected a whopping $21. All right, so hence, at Margaret's suggestion, I purchased t-shirts. I purchased them. If you want one, they're right there. You make whatever donation. If you think it's worth 50 cents, it's 50 cents. If you want to buy one shirt for $5, it's $5. You give whatever you want. And as always, we've got our piggy banks. And Bob and I still match. Last week, you guys let me down. I only had to pay $80. That's a little poor. So please drain my bank account. With that being said, I'd like to, Sarah, before you come up here now, but I'd like to welcome our international guests. We have any? Not sure that we do have here. How about online? Who's online from abroad? International Rotarians. Unmute yourself. quiet group, okay. How about US Rotarians? So these are all my people here, that's okay. Very good. How about online? What US Rotarians are visiting? Nada. Nadia. All right. It's the weather, must be, it must be. But I do know we have one guest, Mr. Bill Hyde, friend of mine from Munich. Thank you for being here, Bill. Great. Sarah, you want to join me and talk about the volunteer opportunity?
Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me at the microphone again today. This is my last opportunity to plug the Meals on Wheels volunteer event. Right now, it's just me and Ted and Jody, and that's going to be a heavy lift if we've got 100 to 150 seniors playing bingo. So apparently feisty, I've heard. I'm a little nervous about what I'm getting into here, but please, the registration link is in the gyrator. It is this Thursday. The bingo event starts around 9:30, and then they'll be serving lunch by 11:30. So if you are able to volunteer for some or all of that, we would definitely welcome you. Lisa, if you're still online, I think Jody said she was going to pick you up, so that makes 4 of us. I just volunteered everyone. I would tell you where you need to go if I could remember. But do you remember?
Damon and Lawrence.
Perfect. So it is on West Lawrence, and there is parking available. So please, if you have an hour or two to spare on Thursday, please come join us. And I'm going to turn over to Wes to talk about our dictionary project.
Thank you, Sarah.
The dictionary project is one we've done for a number of years, and we want people to sign up, preferably doing so online. There's a sign up on the Rotary One website. Failing that, I don't know, some of you are like me and you would just call me up. So by all means, do that. What this is all about is you would, number one, you would contact the school, which I would assign you, probably 2 schools, and set a date and a time to come and deliver the dictionaries to their 3rd grade classrooms. The other thing you would need to do is ask them how many 3rd graders you have. That's kind of important, given that the size of some classes is much smaller or much greater than you would anticipate. Then the 3rd thing is to pick up the dictionaries on North Clark Street and get them to the schools. What I do, as some of you know, is I say a few words about Rotary, what Rotary is about, how old it is. 1905 seems like an eternity ago to these kids. And so you have to kind of point out that life was different. Didn't have cars, sometimes didn't have streets, and that there were other challenges. And then you deliver the dictionaries. It's a truly enjoyable event. As Betsy and I discovered one time when we were at one school, there's always a question you can't possibly anticipate. How many would expect a dictionary that admittedly has 150 pages of encyclopedia type stuff at the back? How many of you would anticipate that a 3rd grader would raise her hand and ask, is there a periodic table of the elements in here? Well, you know there is. I kept talking while she paged through the thing frantically to get an answer. I mean, it was truly entertaining, and the kids are great. It's a wonderful opportunity to do a little hands-on volunteer work. I can only encourage any and all who are interested to sign up. Thank you.
Nope, stay here, stay here, stay here. Thanks, guys. I think all that information is in the gyrator, so look it up there. You can register online. Encourage you to do so. And with that, we're coming towards the end of our meeting, at which point I'd like for you to stand and join Wes and me in the four-way test.
First, is it the truth? Second,
It's fair to all concerned.
third,
Will
Goodwill,
and
friendships.
fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Meeting adjourned.